Nioh 2 is the ideal sequel to an already great game. Ever since the week of Thanksgiving, I've been on an absolute bender of Souls-likes. I played Dark Souls 2 for the first time, went back and played Dark Souls 3 for the second time, re-downloaded Elden Ring and played that for roughly 30 hours or so, before finally deciding to give Nioh 2 its fair shake. I played the original Nioh back in 2019, and although I never finished the game, I got a decent chunk into it, having gotten to Oda Nobunaga before stopping, so pretty much right at the end of the game. And I really enjoyed Nioh. The combat was interesting, and the idea of having 3 different stances for combat, each with their own benefits and detriments, was a welcome change to the Souls-like formulaic combat, which tended to boil down to hit, dodge, block. And on top of the 3 stances, you had Living Weapon. Basically your get out of jail free card. All this is to say that the combat was the draw of Nioh, and boy, they stepped it up a notch in the second game. Nioh 2 takes everything that the first game did well and piles more on top of it. You now have a burst counter that can be used on enemies whenever you see a glowing red aura around them, pretty much a parry that leaves them open for punishment. Killing a yokai now has the chance to drop something called a soul core. Using these, you can attach them to your guardian spirits, allowing you to use certain attacks that said yokai would use. Living Weapon from the first game has now been replaced with Yokai Shift, which is pretty much the exact same thing, except you turn into a yokai. I'm gonna admit, I liked Living Weapon better. Now, me being an absolute dumbass when it comes to even remotely difficult games, I struggled my way through the first 30 hours while I tried to remember how to play. I had to get a grasp on the new mechanics. And although I can understand and perform them now, I won't pretend like I'm a pro at it. I still suck major ass. Luckily, the game is absolutely amazing at letting you play however you want. You can be a ranged sniper, you can be a mage who's constantly buffing themselves, or you can be an agile ninja-like character. The playstyles are infinite, so even if you suck at the combat, you can always find something to fit what you're looking for. Or you can just stop sucking ass and get good at the game. Whatever you want to do. However, there is one aspect of the combat and fights I hate about this game. Nioh 2 suffers from what I'd like to refer to as stinky dogshit boss design. There are a lot of bosses in this game, 32 in the base game and 16 in the DLC, for a total of 48 bosses. And out of all of those bosses, I'd say like 35% of them are way too easy and die before I even realize I'm fighting a boss. 15% of them pound my ass so hard I forget I'm a fucking virgin, and the rest, pretty damn fun and fair fights. Granted, this is a very subjective take because there are so many different builds and ways that you can play the game, so not everyone's experiences with the bosses will be the same. However, there are some bosses that feel as though the devs had a certain way they wanted you to fight them. A great example of this is the human version of Saito Toshimitsu. This guy kicked my fucking ass. He had the horrible habit of casting a buff that made it so you can't use ranged attacks on him or they'd be deflected back at you. And up to that point, I had opted for a primarily ninjutsu based build, since that's what I had gone with in the first Nioh. But this man, this absolute fucking monster, made me change my whole build. I had to spec into Onmyo Magic so I could get Sloth, because this man was way too fucking fast for my brain to process. I loaded up on yokai pots, and I just went as aggressive as I could to try and break his ki and get a grapple. Granted, there are not a whole lot of bosses like this. The only other bosses I can remember that gave me a whole bunch of trouble were the giant snake with his little tiny snake arms, the yokai version of Katsuie, Lady Osakabe, and Tatari Moke. On the opposite side of that spectrum, however, there are bosses that are way too fucking easy. Ones that I killed within a single try without breaking a sweat. Shuten Doji, Daidara Bochi, Maguro Naotaka, Yoshimoto, Ryomen Sukuna, Yuki. Well, that's a lie. I died like 3 times on Gyuki, but that was because I kept locking on, and let me tell you, the camera does not like it when you lock onto Gyuki. For the most part, however, these guys all posed so little a threat, the most damage they did to me was clipping my fucking toenails. But between the bosses that whooped me into next week and those that laid down and died without so much as a fight, there are some real gems. Saito Yoshitatsu, Azai Nagamasa, Saika Magoichi, all the Tokichiro fights. These guys are all some of the most fair and fun challenges I've gotten from any Souls-like in a while. And coming off the back of playing Dark Souls 2, where every boss is either a punching bag or the world's strongest piece of shit with a hitbox to match, this game was a breath of fresh air. And I haven't even mentioned the world of the story yet. The world's fucking gorgeous. Some of these missions are absolutely beyond breathtaking. The Mausoleum of Evil, Daigo Cherry Viewing, the Village of Cursed Blossoms, A Song to Calm the Storm. I mean, most of these levels they're fucking amazing. But there's one level that gives me nightmares. The Frenzied Blaze. And yes, I am dedicating an entire paragraph to just rant about this mission because I fucking hate it. The Frenzied Blaze is a shit stain on what is otherwise a big step up in level design from the first Nioh. This mission is a fire maze with corridors and passages blocked off behind killing one of the worst enemies in the game, Wheel Monks, and I hate it. It's orange, it's ugly, avoiding the fire while fighting is annoying. Every time I had to go there for a mission, even though it was like twice, maybe 3 times total, I can't remember, I absolutely dreaded it. I mean, just look at this fucking map and tell me you wouldn't also hate navigating it. Fuck the Frenzied Blaze, the only saving grace for me is the big-breasted cat girl wheeling around like a Beyblade at the end. Now, Nioh has never really been known for having the best story or the most engaging story, but damn, Nioh 2's story? It actually surprised me. The first Nioh was so forgettable that all I honestly remember of it was the fact that you're some British weeb and you're chasing the world's most forgettably named villain, Kelly, who stole your waifu. Nioh 2, on the other hand, I can only describe as a Japanese history lesson delivered through the brain of Kentaro Miura. The story follows significant events in Japanese history between the 1500s up to the 1600s. Basically, your dad, who was the head of a yokai hunting group, banged a yokai, who, in all fairness, I would also bang. I mean, fucking look at her. He fathers a pair of twins and decides to leave behind the yokai slaying world, breaking this super ultra rare sword that grants eternal life and can kill yokai. The pieces of the sword are passed down to you and another yokai hunter named Mumio. From there, you team up with several important figures in Japanese history, and pretty much follow the events leading up to Oda Nobunaga's death, and the turmoil that follows. All while this angry old nutsack looking man who has a hate boner for your family runs around possessing people and doing, evil guy things. It's a simple enough plot, but if you've any inkling about Japanese history, you know that most of your companions die, and a lot of the time, you're the one who has to kill them. You have to kill Aquaman because he's half yokai and he gets big angry. You have to kill Katsuie because he turns half yokai and gets big angry. You kill your closest companion and best friend through most of the story, Tokichiro, like 3 fucking times because he becomes obsessed with Piss Crystal. The story is great. It's still not perfect, and it's very, very easy to get lost and lose track of what's happening and who's who due to its constant and incessant need to have a fucking time skip every other mission. But it's certainly a step in the right direction when it comes to stories by Team Ninja. All in all, Nioh 2 is pretty damn good. I like it a lot. I think there are some balancing issues, camera control could be better, the story could use some work, but overall, it took everything that worked in the first game and doubled down, making one of the best games to come out of 2020. And if you ask me for a numerical score, I'd give it, an 8 or an 8.5 out of 10. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have big-breasted cat girls rockin' wheelies to admire.